Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the BAMcast. I'm your host, Baker Shields, and my goal of this show is to help you learn, evolve, and grow by any means necessary. Today, we have a very, very special guest, my little sister, some of the craziest quads on the internet, the quad mother, as I nicknamed her. Addison Shields, or better known as Addison Brinley on social media. We're going to learn in today's episode some of her past relationships and what she had to go through, how she's learned from them to move on, her take on the current state of feminism and toxic masculinity within our generation, and about her shift from quitting her full-time hourly job to go all in on our business, the BAMN Coalition, together. This episode was an absolute blast to film. I had so much fun just helping her to share more of her story because she's always nervous to share it. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy kind of rounding her out as a person and getting to learn more about who she is. Before we hop into the episode, I want to ask you guys to like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe if you're listening on any other type of listening or audio platform, being Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, anywhere like that. And I hope you guys enjoy the episode as I did. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay. We have got Addison Shields here, or Addison Brinley, as you like to go by online. Addie is my sister, even though she doesn't like to claim me, and business partner. But I think today's going to be really cool because you post a lot on social media, but you don't talk a lot, right, about like who you are or the things you've been through, or like not many people like know your story. They just know that you have like a crazy physique, right? So I think today is going to be really cool because I will force you to tell a little bit of your story. So looking forward to it. But how are you doing today after our technical setup that we just finished?
I'm doing good. I finally figured it out. This has been like 2 weeks in the making, so it was about time that I
Yep.
figured out the camera setup.
Yep. You slept through one podcast showing that we were supposed to have, and then the other one you panicked and we're just like, let's just cancel it. Let's just do it another time. So
Sorry about that.
this has been a few weeks in the makings, but it's giving me extra time to prep for some questions I want to ask you. So
Right.
I'm excited about it. All right, so I want to hear from you. I think people want to hear from you on just tell us about like if you had to describe what you do specifically and like who you are. Tell a little bit about just a little about who you are and like what you do.
So I feel like most people would consider me an influencer. I, for some reason, don't like that term. It makes me feel like very like a trend or something, and I don't really see myself as that. I obviously bodybuild. That's something I'm pretty passionate about. I have big goals within that industry. I do online coaching. We own our own business. Obviously, you're aware of that because you are partners with me in it. And then instead of influencing, I just tell people I do social media because that's what I consider it. Obviously, I
Yeah.
post pretty frequently. I share a lot of workouts. I don't share a lot about my personal life, but I feel like I do pretty well with sharing kind of like what my routines look like on a day-to-day basis, or share, me hitting legs 6 times a week because that's like all I do.
Yeah.
But that's a little bit about me. That's kind of like the base info.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you hit the nail on the head with like you're very good at sharing your routines, like what's going on day to day. But I'm excited to dive into kind of like what's behind the scenes, right? What you got going on with your personal life and the things that have just kind of made you you. So let's kind of dive into that. First, I want to talk about a topic that is kind of like a hot button topic right now. You hear the term toxic masculinity all the time, and people have different groups, right? Whether you're red pill, blue pill, all sorts of things. Like they have different opinions on whether that's even a real thing or something we should be worried about being toxic masculinity. But what is your opinion on the current state of just men in general and masculinity in general?
Like, can you give me a little bit more context, like what exactly you're asking?
Yeah, so you're a young woman, right, out there in the dating field. You've got like you've had your own experiences and run-ins with different guys over time. Toxic masculinity is essentially masculine traits, features being toxic in an effect of like men wanting to accomplish or achieve or conquer, or lack of risk aversion, like those types of things that are typically considered traditional masculine traits are now being considered like very toxic. So I'm really just curious for your perspective as a woman that's out there right now, that you're experiencing all of these types of like guys, right? That you're seeing like this is the red pill age, essentially, like the manosphere and all those types of things that are going on. For a woman out there trying to date right now and trying to just be a woman out there, like, do you think that that's a problem, right? Do you see toxic masculinity? Do you see, especially being in the fitness industry, where probably a lot of us have much more narcissistic tendencies than like just general public, right? Are you seeing toxic masculinity out there? What's your kind of opinion on the state of men as you've seen previously, maybe even looking like dad and his generation, or and then like comparing to now?
I mean, I feel like there are definitely the good and the bad. I feel like I've had the opportunity to experience both. Um, I would definitely say that there are a lot of there's a lot of toxic masculinity out there in terms of men. I feel like it's more so men feeling a little bit threatened by women, and that's kind of what brings
Yeah.
those traits or those habits out of a man. Um, but thankfully, there are lots of good men out there. There's still good men
Mhm.
who don't let a woman and like her success or her independence kind of threaten their manhood. Obviously, it's a
Yeah.
really good thing to. I mean, you have your wife who is literally the most wonderful human. Like she
Cheers.
she's super great. She has lots going for her. She has her own goals, and I don't think that's ever once threatened you in any way. You've always been supportive. You've always been behind her. You want to see her succeed. She wants to see you succeed. Um, so I feel like I've had the opportunity to kind of see both. Like I experience a lot of toxic masculinity on social media. I get lots
Yeah.
of unwarranted opinions from men that like I don't know who they are. I don't know why they feel the need to comment some of the things that they comment or say to me. And I feel like that's a threat because they see a woman doing something that might be a little bit different, or maybe it's not their preference, so they feel the need to voice those opinions. Um, Obviously, I've been in past relationships where I've experienced the same thing where a man has not really supported me because whether they don't understand it or they don't really like the idea of me being kind of out there. But I've also had the opportunity to experience the other side of that where men in my life, like you, um, like my current relationship, like dad, they've all been super supportive. Like they are people who are you guys are people who want to see me succeed, want to see me win, and have literally no issue helping me get there, if that makes sense. So I feel like I've had the opportunity to experience both, and I feel like most oftentimes what brings that out of a man is feeling threatened by a woman or seeing his woman like do good things or do big things, and maybe not feeling like he's in the same position of success or whatever it might be. I feel like that's
Yeah.
where that comes from.
I think that's an accurate description, and I am curious from your perspective, what is it about you specifically do you think that makes online, like the men online, most of these people are nameless, are faceless, right? But what do you think it is specifically about you that threatens or provokes these men online to act or to spew kind of hate?
I think it's the fact that you don't actually know me as a person. You don't actually know like who I am. I feel like if you're a man who's just kind of looking from the outside in, then you feel like you have the right, or you feel like you're entitled to kind of voice your opinion about someone. I think it goes for most women in the fitness industry who are actually like into bodybuilding, into actually like building muscle, doing their thing. I think that threatens a lot of men because it's different in a way, um,
Yeah.
and it's not always appealing to some men. Like I feel like women who are actually like fit and lifting and actively pursuing some kind of goal like that, typically you hear, that's so manly, like that's so masculine. Why would you ever want to look like that? Why do you want to do that to yourself? You're ruining your femininity. Like, I think
Yeah.
that these people just see something different that they don't understand. But 9 times out of 10, these men are probably smaller than you, probably can't lift as much as you. So
Hmm.
essentially, you've just threatened their ego, and they don't like that. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's where it comes from, because I hear a lot of other women who are in the influencing or fitness industry who get the same type of comments, and we're all kind of in the same boat. Like, it's these men who just can't fathom that a woman wants to be like fit and athletic and strong, and
Yeah.
they're not. So I think that's kind of where
Do
that,
you think do you think that it's a lot of these men have like a specific mold in their head of like this is what a woman should look like, should be like, should act like. These are the traits that she should have, and like anything outside of that is wrong, is unnatural, is gross. Like, do you think that is kind of the case?
yeah, I actually do. I think that there's still like that ideal woman in a lot of men's minds, or even kind of in society, and I think that's always probably going to be stick. It's always going to stick around. I mean, I feel like that's just kind of how it is. Um, but I feel like more so now than ever before, like there are lots of people and lots of women who are just deciding to not fit in that mold, and to just
Yeah.
actually like embrace themselves, embrace what they actually want to do. So I think that those changes are just kind of shocking to some guys, because they think like, this is what I want, this is who I want, this is how I want it to look, how to act, whatever. And then they're seeing all of these women like display themselves in a manner of like, they're very comfortable with their sexuality on the internet, or they're very comfortable with showing like that they want to be fit, they want to be strong, or they're very comfortable with just kind of being them, being independent, and not really giving two craps what a man thinks about that. So I think that that sometimes makes,
You can cuss on here, by the way, or you can cuss on here.
sorry, I'm not used to cussing. I think that that just makes men feel uncomfortable, because sometimes I think it makes them feel like they're like losing control, or like they don't see that mold that they want like this specific girl to fit or something, and
Yeah.
that just kind of freaks them out. So they don't really know how to handle it, I guess.
I think that's a great description of it because I mean we're from small town Oklahoma, right? Like women don't look like you where we grew up, right? In Perry, Oklahoma. They don't typically have. I mean, it's been cool since I feel like we left, and I'm not saying like we changed anything real. Like the whole fitness industry as a whole has become much more widespread, much more popular, like not as stigmatized to be a part of, right? So I think a lot of people have kind of just taken up working out and want and physique goals and things like that, just as a result of just them seeing the fitness industry more in a better light. But I also think that, you and I were one of the first two people that I was aware of from where we grew up that went off and like documented our journey and kind of did this, right? And I remember some of the pushback that we got from doing that. Like you had friends that unfollowed you, you had people that blocked you, and it's like you never even said anything to these people about what you're trying to do. You were just posting what you were trying to post and building your following and sharing what you wanted to share, right? And people blocked you, which was just the weirdest thing to, I know you, and I'm sure it hurt, but me as well. I think that it is a very, especially in probably the Midwest and like Southern communities and like more small town kind of vibes, it's very that idea of a woman, right? And the idea of a man and the idea of the roles of the two have been so static for so long.
Yeah.
And so just generalized and traditional for so long. So I think that it does make men uncomfortable. Number one, because of the insecurity portion of it, right? But number two, because like this is unnormal. This is not what you're supposed to do. Why? How is she able to go do these things? Like who's letting her? And like those types of it's a very antiquated view of a woman, right? Like femininity. Just like I think masculinity is getting kind of twisted and warped and put through these different ringers and perspectives as well,
Yeah.
where I do think that toxic masculinity can exist, right? Like there's a form of it out there that can exist and be harmful and everything. But I also think that as there's a rise in this feminist movement of like, go make your own money. You don't need anybody. Like, go do your own thing. Go, acquire as much as you can, look a certain way, go build as much muscle as you can. I think as that stuff rises, it's kind of like a rising of the tide of the masculine traits that you guys are starting to kind of like pursue, right? It's almost like turning and being like, okay, you guys we're working on our masculine side and like achievement and gain and all those things. You guys need to soften yourselves. Like, I think that's a general, in the more toxic parts of the feminism movement, I think that's kind of what's happening is they're like, we need to look at men now and tell them they need to soften themselves because we are filling this role now without their help. And so I think it's really interesting. I don't have many opinions on it either way, but I think it'll be intriguing to kind of see how that develops with the next few generations of men and women, because right now, on average in corporate America, the average woman actually makes, I think it's like in Gen Z, whatever generation we're in, the average woman actually makes like on average $1,000 a year more than the average man. And women are getting hyper educated, right? Like, women are more likely to go to school, more likely to finish school, more likely to get higher education degrees. I mean, we know a bunch of women, like our mom has like basically her doctorate. She has like 3 masters. Our aunt's got a doctorate and masters. Our grandmother, right? Like, we have a bunch of women who have just are hyper educated in our family, and we've seen it with a bunch of our friends as well. But on average, women are actually earning more in our generation than men in corporate America, which is we've never seen that before. And this is another question before we kind of get into. Actually, I want to say one more thing. There's also those men that are like all in on the muscle mommy movement that just like worship like you guys too. Like, there's a very we're acknowledging all these guys that are insecure by it, but there's also these guys that are like, yes, like, I want you to be able to physically just like beat me up or at least look like you can. Like, I've got
like it,
yeah,
yeah.
I've got friends that have told me like, I want her to be capable. Like, I want a woman to be capable of beating me up or just like crushing me. And I'm like, okay, to each their own, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think? What's been your experience with those types of guys?
So personally, I think that most women in like fitness who, and I don't mean this obviously anything against like women who are not like in bodybuilding or whatever, but women who like really do like genetically just like pack on muscle or like just look jacked. Thankfully, there are lots of men who do like us women. Like, there really are.
Yeah,
Like, my current relationship, like, never once has said anything negative about me having muscle. And then, like, we'll read the comments online and stuff, and like people will voice their opinion about it, and then you'll have the people who literally like crush my skull. And
yeah,
I personally love muscle mommies, or like they'll like say these like this kind of out of
yeah,
sometimes. I won't lie,
yeah,
but
yeah,
there are lots of people who actually do genuinely like women who are fit, who are more muscular. So thankfully, we still have men out there who like us. We're not like confined to a specific group. There are men who are muscular and not muscular who like muscular women. So we still have lots of options, which is great. And obviously,
yeah.
we love the men who like strong women. But I mean, it's kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie. That's probably one of my favorite things is reading the like out of pocket comments where I'm like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
How did you ever
No,
comment
it's yeah, it is hilarious, and then you're like, wait, I don't can't tell if these guys are being completely serious or not. Like, that's kind of weird to just put that out there.
that? But they did. So we
But no,
still
I
have
think that's
options. We still have men who actually do appreciate because most of these women are not actually like masculine. Like, I wouldn't consider
no, no, no,
any of us actually masculine. Like, just because you have muscle does not mean you're a man. Like,
no,
you're literally born with muscle. You can grow it or you don't have to.
exactly.
So I feel like people just kind of looking at it are like, yeah, they're masculine, but most women are actually not masculine whatsoever. Like, we just like to lift, we like to be strong, whatever. So there's lots of men who do like that and who do appreciate it. So we're not like out of options or anything.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. one interesting trend, I'm curious your opinion on this. One interesting trend is as women begin to earn more than men, as women are becoming more educated than men, as there's this kind of this rise of I'm going to make my own money, I'm going to support myself, I don't need anybody else. There's also a super highly correlated trend in divorce rates. And you can like look at these two side by side with like this is the trend of, you know, women's income and women's performance versus men, and this is the trend of divorce rates over time.
Mm.
And it's one of the theories out there, or many of the theories out there, tie into when there isn't those traditional roles, when a woman does not feel secure that she has the comfort of a man to take care of her, to provide, like when there's that not that dynamic in the relationship, men feel more insecure, more inadequate. There's a lot of even like sexual impotence and stuff, like people having like ED and like not being able to perform. It's weird, like it's crazy how many factors that it actually can affect. But what is your opinion on, like, do you feel like whoever you do end up with, because I know we're not name dropping your current relationship, do you feel like whoever you end up with, do you feel like that there's gonna be that pressure? Would you be comfortable, I guess, out earning your potential spouse? Would you be comfortable with that, like truly? Because I want to get kind of introspective on this. Is Do you think that's a big deal for you? Do you think in a relationship, because I know you're very independent, do you feel like you're going to need that, I guess, factor, right? The traditional, like, he makes more than me, he can take care of me. I can do my own thing, but like, I do want to kind of have that there.
I think personally, like I've never placed a lot of like value in that. For me, I feel like more so than anything, I want to feel, I guess, safe with the man. I want to feel like he is kind of like the provider and the protector of the family. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to make like a lot more than me, or that like if I wasn't gonna work, he could take care of me. Like that doesn't actually mean that to me. Like it's more so, I guess, who they are as a person. Like I need
Yeah.
that to be stable. I need that to make me feel protected. Um, I wouldn't like judge a man or anything like that if I made more than them. Like that's not something I would be like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I'm making more than you. Like that's embarrassing. But I think that's that like judgment, or that like I don't know how you describe that, but that normally I think comes from the man side, just feeling like they're not doing what they're supposed to, or they're not the breadwinner, or I just think that that comes from like societal standards for a man,
It does.
and
Yeah.
that's kind of what men let affect them. I really genuinely don't think a lot of women judge men for that, or like, you know, oh, I make more than you, so like you're not doing what you're supposed to, or I think that that comparison 9 times out of 10 probably comes from the man side. So I would never judge a man if he made less than me, as
Hmm.
long as like you're providing and protecting and whatever in some type of way. Like it would not bother me.
I think there's a lot of women that share your perspective on it, and I think there are probably a lot of women that expect the opposite.
Yeah,
But I also do think that we as men tend to almost self sabotage in that
yeah.
instance, because it is like a very, like, that is something that just innately I personally have always felt the responsibility for,
Mhm.
and I know a lot of men feel that way. So
Yeah.
I know that, like, there's been times where Kinsey has, my wife, she got on me because I haven't mentioned her yet in the podcast, but Kinsey, there's been times where she has like made more than me. There was a time 2 years ago where I was I was going to be in between things, and I wasn't going to have any income if I didn't like make something happen quickly. And she basically like came to me, and I sometimes still get emotional like talking about it, but she came to me and she was like, Baker, if you want to bet on yourself and not take something else, and you just want to work on you and your businesses, like, I will support you. Like, I want you to be happy.
Mhm.
I don't want you to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be unhappy and you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
And that was so, for me, that was so just calming, and it was kind of like a wave of just like, wow, I don't have to do this for her to love me or for her to be here. But it made me want to work even harder so that she never had to like say something like that to me again.
Mhm.
Right. So I do think that a lot of times the man puts that type of pressure on themselves.
Yeah.
And I think whenever they are not meeting that, right, and they're not able to provide and they're not able to be that breadwinner, I think that they internally have a very different, more toxic dialogue that makes them want to act out in maybe a toxically masculine way, makes them want to sabotage the relationship, makes it harder for them to connect with their partner because they feel like they can't say certain things or run the household or do those types of things that they feel like they should be doing, right? And so I do think that that plays a role as well. And it's not necessarily women's fault that they're advancing at the rate that they are at all, right? But it also can be, you can also point the finger at men and how we react to those types of situations and not look at it as like, okay, I'm going to go earn more. I'm going to figure out a way to be this if I feel like I need to be this for this woman, for my significant other. Or, right, I'm not going to let it bother me that maybe I'm a stay-at-home dad, which is something we're seeing more and more.
Mhm.
So I think it's a really interesting conversation, and I was curious your perspective on it. We talked a little bit about some of your relationships. Let's kind of dive into that because you've been through the ringer, right? We have all seen it, like as your family and everything, and it's tough as your big brother to watch some of the things that probably toxically masculine, I think it's fair to say, men have put you through.
Yeah.
What are you tell us or tell the people a little bit about kind of like your relationship history and what you've kind of gone through?
So it's honestly not a good track record if we're being real. um, Honestly, I would just say that I think one of my like biggest flaws, it's a good thing, but it's also a flaw, is I will give and give and give and give to someone that I care about until I literally don't have anything left, until I literally
Mhm.
cannot give anymore. And that has just kind of screwed me over several times in the past. Um, I've dealt with the toxic men, I've dealt with toxic situations. I have been through the ringer with relationships, and I don't think I've ever really shared any of that on social media whatsoever because
Yeah.
while I know there's so many women that can actually relate to it, that's stuff that I always feel like I tend to keep private. Because I've dealt with like being not being judged, but kind of I don't know how to explain it. I've dealt with like where my social media becomes an issue in a lot of relationships. I'm kind of going back to social media because I honestly feel like that's one of the things that's caused issues. Um, because I'm out there, because I get a lot of attention, whether that's from females or males. Like that's just kind of part of being on social media and kind of what you have to deal with. And I think that's been an issue in prior relationships because they don't really know how to handle that. They don't really feel like it makes a lot of men feel a little bit insecure. Um, so yeah, I feel like I've been through lots of toxic relationships. You might have to ask me like some detailed questions so I can actually like give you some answers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're cool with me being just like candid about it,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
You seem nervous, but I'm not gonna like reveal any details or anything.
Yeah.
But I've watched. I do think that you are just the type of person who has such a giving and just caring heart that you truly believe you can change anybody. Like you see the best in people and you think that if you love them long enough, you love them hard enough, like they will become that version of themselves, no matter what evidence they give you to the contrary.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've seen in other women. Like I've seen them kind of like act and move the same type of ways where they almost seek out or are attracted to like the bad boy, right? For just like the cliche, or like the person that is kind of like on that fringe of like, this is probably not a very productive member of society, maybe, like, or a very like um strong, like steady type of like person that is going to really fulfill what I kind of need. But I think in these kind of like flash in the pan instances that I'm seeing that maybe, and I can possibly get them to that point. Do you feel like that's accurate?
Yeah, that probably is accurate. I think that
Yeah.
I am a person who oftentimes have seen, like, I guess, the potential and kind of latched on to the potential of someone rather than like what they actually are, who they actually are.
Yeah. And from that perspective, it's so hard from an outsider's perspective because we're not in the relationship, we're not a part of it, we don't feel what you feel, right? But to watch somebody repeatedly, like you've dealt with cheating on multiple occasions, pretty much all of the occasions, right? Like you've dealt with people just like stepping all over you, right? Like making you feel small. And in all of those instances, or most of those instances, you stuck by that person. Like you're almost loyal to a fault in those instances. And I'll never forget one of the things that you told me at one point about one of them was, you said, I just feel like I need to, like, I know this is not, you told me, I know this is not going to work, but I feel like I need to continue to get wronged to the point where I hate him, and then I'll be able to walk away. Like, you told me that. And I could not, like, I'm the type of person that if you wrong me one time in a specific type of way, I'm out. Like, I could never talk to you again and I can be fine. Right. So I can't identify with that thought, but from the outside looking in, it seems like it's not logical, right? But love's never logical. I know that, but it it is hard from the outside looking in to understand it and to watch it happen, right? I'm gonna say a quote, and I want you to kind of give your feelings on that based on your experience. Okay, you drown not by falling in the river, but by staying submerged in it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that my thought process when I told you that, because like I've had this conversation with other girls, so I know I'm not the only girl who thinks that.
You're not. You're definitely not. It's not an isolate. Like, it's not just you, for sure.
So I've had this conversation with other girls, and it's like at one point or another, you really cared about this person, you really loved this person, and then, the toxic happens, or the bad happens, or the fights happen, or some relationships, the abuse happens, whether it's mental or physical, whatever. Like those things happen, and it's like at first, the first few times those things happen, you're kind of like, oh well, I'm just gonna forgive them. I'm just gonna let it go. Like it's okay. Like everyone has bad days, or whatever it might be. And then it continues to happen, and it's like this love and care that you have for the person kind of dwindles each and every time that happens. Because, like I told you earlier, like there's only so much a person has to give. There's almost only so much fight a person has in them. So
Yep.
at some point, as that starts to dwindle, it's like myself and a lot of other girls, I think, like from conversations I've had prior, it's almost like you have to get yourself to that point where you no longer have that love and care for a person, so that when that like last final event happens, like you can just let it go, like you can just be done, like you're fine.
Hmm.
So I think that is very, very true. Like you do yourself a disservice by staying in something that's negative or toxic or unhealthy for so long. And I think most of us know that, myself included. You aren't doing yourself any favors by hanging on to someone who's not showing you, the love or the respect that you deserve. Um, but I feel like that's just kind of, I guess, the mindset of a lot of people, and especially because I feel like women tend to hang on to that potential of a person rather
Yeah.
than like really truly just looking at like, this is what this person's doing, this is what this person's showing me, and just kind of letting it go from there. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I definitely think that you do drown yourself by just kind of submerged in that. Like it, but most of the time, thankfully, us women come out on top and we eventually see the light at the end of the tunnel and realize that we shouldn't be stuck in those situations or we shouldn't be stuck with those people. Um, and I feel like, eventually we do let it go. But I think that's like the thought process behind a lot of women in relationships with men who don't necessarily meet their needs or provide them what they need provided. Sometimes it's like a safety net. Sometimes it's just like the familiarity or the comfort that person kind of provides you because it's like routine, if you will. Um, but eventually, most people get out, or eventually you realize like you're actually doing yourself the disservice. So
Yeah. And I think another thing that you kind of alluded to is these types of men that are causing these types of relationships, they're also not dumb in most cases. They're like you said, like one little thing happens and it kind of like takes a little bit of your love away, right? Or it makes you like you kind of have to like stomach that little thing that happens. And they're not going to go from like a little thing to like a big thing. Like they're not going to go from like disrespecting you once in a backhanded way to like I cheated on, like that type of thing, you know. They are very good at taking like an inch, an inch, an inch, an inch, an inch, so that you are constantly like in your brain, in your logic, in your thought processes, you're like, well, I dealt with this thing that was almost as bad as what I'm dealing with right now last week. So, what's the point in like, is that where I draw the line, right? Between like this almost as bad thing and this little bit worse thing that happened today, right? So like you're constantly moving the bar of what you're willing to put up with.
yeah,
And on their end, as that bar is moving, they know that they can fully operate in from this bar point right here, they can fully operate with whatever they want now over here because you've already established that you're going to put up with it. And I think that's something else to be looking out for if you are a woman in this type of a relationship right now, is that's something that I witnessed you go through. And it causes you like the woman in that relationship to use that type of a logic, and they know they're doing that to you.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. And then this is something else. This is another quote. Saying what you feel will never ruin a real connection.
I do believe that. I actually do believe that, and it's crazy because like my current relationship, um, it's still pretty new, but he's been very like open and willing to communicate like literally everything. And I'm so used to, if I have feelings, if something makes me feel some type of way, I am not supposed to express that. I cannot speak on that because if I do, it just ruins everything. Or I set
Yeah.
a whole nother list of problems that I may not have even known existed, or, I get turned into the bad guy and they're the victim or whatever. So I actually do believe that if it's a real connection and the man is actually like a good man, then he's going to deal with whatever your feelings are, no matter how big or small. Like they will sit there, they will listen, they will communicate with you, even if it annoys them. Like I'm sure you and Kenzie have fights where you're like, why is this even a thing? Or like,
Oh yeah.
why
Big
is
time.
he saying this? But I genuinely think no matter how big or small it is, if a man really does care about you or really does care about your feelings, like he will sit there, listen to it, talk you through it, whatever it might be. And a man who his priority is him, his priority is not you or your feelings, they are the ones who will turn it into you're the problem, you're doing this, why are you even bringing this up? Like you become at fault for everything and all things. But then the
Yep.
people who actually do care, like they will sit there and take their time to make sure that everything's talked out, everything's good, everything's communicated. And like I don't know, that's new to me. Like I've never been able to like speak my feelings and not be like scared to speak them. Like I can actually like talk, and I feel like I'm sure most women have experienced that at least once in their life where you are not able to do that.
Yeah. How do you think you set yourself up differently for this relationship versus your previous ones? Like, what did you do in between to kind of break the toxic cycle?
Well, I don't really know if I did anything to like set myself up, But I feel like it's like, I don't know, it's just like a completely different dynamic. Like the individual I'm with now, like actually understands kind of everything that I guess, um, like everything that I've like done. Like we've talked about like past relationships. We've kind of talked about what he's been through, what I've been through, and like the dynamic is like we do pretty much the exact same thing. So like we're able to kind of understand each other really well, and we kind of just like clicked. And I think in the past, like I've almost tried to like force a connection, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
not necessarily force it, but like try to make something happen, even if I wasn't like 100% sure. Like it didn't happen just like really easily or like really naturally. We didn't just like click right off the bat. And like in this relationship, we definitely clicked really fast and really easy. Like it's like we've known each other for way longer than we actually have, and it's a strange thing, but it's like it's a really good thing. It's just very different from what I'm used to. So I don't really think that there was anything that like I set myself up to approach it differently. I just think that the dynamic and the connection just flowed super super easy in comparison to what I've experienced in the past. Like not that relationships are hard, relationships take work for sure. Everyone
Yeah.
knows that. Like you are working on things day in and day out, but I think that there are connections that everyone's had at some point. Like I'm sure you've had them in your past where it didn't feel as easy as it did with your wife now. Like you
Mm-hmm.
guys, I feel like you guys clicked almost immediately. Like you were kind of
Mm-hmm.
attached at the hip as soon as you guys like actually started to talk and date and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's kind of the difference is I put in like too much work, too much effort trying to make something happen with like prior people. And like I didn't really have to do that this time. It was very much like instant connection, instant like just kind of I don't know, we were like best friends almost immediately. So I think that that's like the difference. It's just the dynamic essentially.
That's awesome. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk about we are on our first pace with our company that we co-own, the BAMN Coalition. We're on pace for our first ever six-figure year in business. And a year ago, I was begging you to quit your hourly job. Let's talk about the shift from where you were at a year ago to now. How have you felt like kind of building, really going all in on building the company?
I felt good about it. I think I was very hesitant, obviously, as you know, to quit my job because it was terrifying and scary, and I liked having, I guess, the security of, I guess, a work environment and a paycheck that I knew was coming. Um, so obviously, I was super super scared. And once I made that adjustment, I feel like a lot of life changes happened for me in January. Like it was very
Mm-hmm.
much just a whole kind of turnover. So I wasn't prepared for it, wasn't ready for it, but it happened. And I feel like it's one of the best things that did happen to me. Um, but I feel like I'm actually very happy doing what I'm doing at this moment. I feel like we've made a lot of good connections. We've met a lot of great people, whether that's been for a long term thing or just a short period of time. I feel like I've met a lot of amazing women through the coaching, through social media. So I feel like that's been a huge blessing in my life. But I'm actually really grateful that we did make that shift. We made that change, and that this is what I get to kind of do on a day in or a daily basis. So yeah, I'm happy about it. It was
Yeah,
scary, but it was good.
yeah, definitely. What do you think that, or how do you think that you've evolved as an entrepreneur over the course of this year? Because from an outsider's perspective, you've evolved a ton, but how do you feel that you've evolved most
Um, I honestly feel
as
like I have.
as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I honestly feel like I have a lot of work to still do. I feel like I'm learning.
We all do.
Yeah, I feel like I'm learning constantly from other people. Like the individual that I'm with, I'm learning a lot from him, kind of how he runs things, how he handles things. I learn a ton from you, how you run things. Obviously, you teach me software, business side. Like I'm so dumb when it comes to like anything that's back end. I feel
Hmm.
like I'm constantly learning from you there. One of like my biggest things that I want to work on, I know this isn't how I've evolved. This is actually what I need to work on. So, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like one of the biggest things I need to work on, like we've talked about, is showing who I am, showing my personality, showing kind of, behind the scenes of me, because I think that will make me a better entrepreneur. I think that'll make me a better business owner. I think that'll make me be a better coach, because I'll be able to build those connections with those girls faster. So that's kind of where I feel like I need to work on, or what I need to work on. But in terms of evolving, I think you and I both have done a pretty good job of kind of building the business, kind of, um, obviously I've really like stayed true to the fitness type of content on my social media, and that's conversations that we've had in the past. So,
Yeah.
don't take the pictures that draw in a whole bunch of men, even if you get lots of likes or whatever, because at the end of the day, that literally doesn't matter. Like, that's not what I'm looking
Yeah,
for. I'm looking for a huge community of women. So I feel like that's one area that I've evolved a lot in, is staying true to what I actually want, staying true to the fitness side of things. And so far, I feel like it's definitely benefited us in terms of being able to build a larger community of people. Like, our
yeah,
Facebook group is huge now. We've got lots of women on the coalition. We also have men in the coalition. So I think that's one way that we've definitely evolved this year in terms of business.
for sure. With the more success like in the business, right? More success with a lot of the sponsorships you've been able to secure, which has been awesome to see. With you having so much success on social media, you've got a crazy physique, which is a lot for your brother to say, right? Because it's a huge smack to the ego. Whenever people are like, "Why do you guys not have the same legs?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. That's a good question."
Me and Ray, it's through the me and
Yeah, the but with all this extra success, I've got a quote I want you to kind of consider.
Okay.
The better you get, the better you realize you can become. The more you work, the more painfully you become aware of your deficiencies. What do you think that means to you as you've achieved higher levels of success in all areas?
I think that is true. I think that it kind of aligns with a lot of talks that you and I have had of like never being satisfied. Like, the more you accomplish, the more you realize, like, okay, now that I've hit this goal, like I can hit this goal and this goal. So I feel like consistently improving yourself, consistently hitting goals, in whatever aspect of life. It doesn't even have to be in the business, but like you said, in the business, you realize like what you're actually capable of, or that you do have more in you to produce or to give. And then, of course, once you hit that goal, you realize that there are even bigger and better things that you can accomplish. So
Yep.
I would say that that's very true. And I would say that's also us, because I think, a year or two ago, we were like nowhere near where we are now. And then if you can imagine, in another year or two, like where we'll be, like it's crazy. So I definitely
Hmm.
think that the more you put in and the more you accomplish, the more you realize like what you're actually capable of, what you actually can accomplish. Like, it's kind of crazy. It's just like a snowball effect. Like, you hit that goal. Like, I don't even know what our goal was last year, but I think we hit the goal. And then this year we've kind of, been able to do even more than that. So I think it just goes to show that the more work you do put in, the more you accomplish, the more you actually realize, like, I am capable of this, and like there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to put it in perspective, I think we're on pace to double last year.
Yeah.
So it's been crazy. And then last year we tripled the year before.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of growth. It's been really fun to be a part of, especially to watch as a big brother, to watch your little sister evolve as an entrepreneur and an athlete and all the things that you're doing. So it's been awesome. You mentioned that you want to start to share more of your life. Do you think you'll ever get into more like long form content like this or like YouTube?
So crazy. I actually was going to try to record a YouTube video today, because
Nice.
I thought it might be easy. So I've already filmed like the intro. So I'm gonna also
Okay.
film kind of like a day in the life. But that's actually something that I want to get into. I've had encouragement from other people as well. Obviously, you being one of them. Um,
Hmm.
but I feel like actually getting to know me is gonna be a lot. more important and a lot more influential than just seeing like my workouts or my physique. Because a lot of people just don't understand sometimes. So I feel like that's where a lot of the criticism and hate comes from. So yeah, I actually do think that that is something I want to get into because I want to be able to share kind of what my days actually look like or what I actually like, who I am, we can talk, whatever. I'll be chatting obviously by myself on the camera, but yes, that is
Yeah,
something I actually want to get into.
that's awesome. That's exciting. All right, one last question for you. What are you going to accomplish by any means necessary?
Hmm. I don't know. I feel like I have lots of goals.
Okay, overarching goal.
Um, Honestly, I feel like my two biggest loves at the moment, well, they've been my two biggest loves, is obviously like our business and then my bodybuilding goals. So I feel like my one kind of personal bodybuilding goal that I want to achieve is I want to get the pro card so bad. I want to eventually hit that goal so that I can be a wellness pro and maybe compete at higher levels. Obviously, that's something that is kind of long term. But more
Yeah,
so than anything, I would say that it is growing our business and just expanding our reach. I think one thing I've always wanted is just a huge community. I'm not leaving the men out, men are included. But I think one thing I've always wanted is a huge community of just women who are chasing goals, who, whether it's fitness, whether it's mental, whether like, however they're trying to improve, I want to build just a huge community and continue building a huge community of lots of amazing, strong women because I think that's something that I align with. And I have conversations with girls all the time, about wanting to look a certain way or not feeling confident or, dealing with emotional baggage or whatever it might be. And so I really like the fact that I am able to make connections with women, give advice, talk things over, like just kind of help. So I really want to be able to continue to do that and make our reach even bigger.
that's awesome. All right, I will, even though most of you guys are probably coming from some form of Addie's social media anyways, if you're watching this or listening to this, I will put Addison's social media and even her YouTube channel in the description for you guys. Hopefully she's got a video by the time this comes up. But Addie, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. I think this was awesome. And looking forward to doing a bunch more episodes with you.
Yes, it'll be fun. Thank you for having me.